أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وإما ينزغنك من الشيطان نزغ فاستعذ بالله إنه سميع عليم إن الذين اتقوا إذا مسهم طائف من الشيطان تذكروا فإذا هم مبصرون وإخوانهم يمدونهم في الغي ثم لا يقصرون صدق الله العظيم. Ibn Kathir rahimahullah, one of the famous Mufassirun, he mentions that in 3 places in the Quran Kareem where after Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions the ayat where there are a very comprehensive understanding of makarim al-akhlaq, very good characteristics and good etiquette, then in 3 of these places it's followed up with the ayat regarding seeking refuge in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from shaitan. One is this ayah in Surah A'raf, وَإِمَّا يَنزَغَنَّكَ مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ فَاسْتَعِذْ بِاللَّهِ, seek protection of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from shaitan. The second in Surah Mu'minun, وَقُلْ رَبِّ أَعُوذُ بِكَ مِنْ هَمَزَاتِ الشَّيَاطِينِ وَأَعُوذُ بِكَ رَبِّ أَنْ يَحْضُرُونِ. And third in Surah Hamim Sajda. There also وَإِمَّا يَنزَغَنَّكَ مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ نَزْغٌ فَاسْتَعِذْ بِاللَّهِ. Over there it's إِنَّهُ هُوَ السَّمِيعُ الْعَلِيمُ. So makarim akhlaq, good character, this is something which was instructed before in the ayat. Now shaitan being the enemy, he is obviously not going to allow someone, and he's going to try his best, as he's taken an oath, that he will ثُمَّ لَآتِيَنَّهُم مِّن بَيْنِ أَيْدِيهِمْ وَمِنْ خَلْفِهِمْ وَعَنْ أَيْمَانِهِمْ. I'll attack them in front of them, behind them, right, left, any way, every way possible. His job is to do his job, which is to send in wasawis, whispers, insinuations. So he won't be happy with this. So he'll take his opportunity. So in the previous ayah where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala instructed us that أَعْرِضَ عَنِ الْجَاهِلِينَ, that when people of ignorance want to engage with you, just turn away from them. Those are times where shaitan will come. Then someone says something to you, some foolish comment, some unnecessary thing. It wasn't appropriate for them to say that. No one's justifying. It's not correct. But shaitan will come at that moment and say that, look, he's saying this to you. He'll work on your pride, your ego. That how dare he? Doesn't he know that you are Allama, Mufti, this, that? Who is he to say this to you? He's a nobody. Doesn't he know how much money you have, how much wealth, which family you come from, you're Sayyid, or you're this or you're that? Doesn't he know your credentials? That at work everyone respects you, they know you're the boss, etc., etc., etc. And not only in that, not only from a dunyawi, worldly perspective, but even from a dini, Islamic perspective. So what will, from his side, shaitan has more knowledge than most people in this world. So he'll say things like, you should act upon justice over here. That it will be adl, it will be just that you do this. Or, for the sake of his reformation, his islah, you should say this, you should say that. At times like this, and now it's possible that sometimes a person, maybe some reformation, islah may be required. It may be times where a person can take, justice and whatnot. But at the moment, a person should desist from that. At that moment, you should desist from it. If it's really something which to take justice from, and it should be, dealt with appropriately, that can be done after that anger passes, after that emotional state a person is in. Because when there's anger in a person, and there's these emotions that are rising at that moment, then that clouds your understanding, your decision. And that's when shaitan uses his moment. So the Quran Kareem says, وَإِمَّا يَنزَغَنَّكَ مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ نَزْغٌ. Nazagha means when you poke at something, you prick at something. They use in Arabic for if you take a needle and you poke at something. The Quran Kareem, this is what shaitan does. He takes his whispers, his insinuations, and he pokes at a person. And he makes him, brings these ideas and these thoughts to his mind. So when a person is in that state, then best is to desist from acting upon it immediately. In the chapters in the books of fiqh, we have one chapter called Adabul Qadi, the protocols of a Qadi, of a judge. So there they say, Al-Qadi la yaqdi wa huwa ghadban, for example. The Qadi, now the idea of the judge, what's he supposed to do? He's supposed to give justice. They say from the protocols, the etiquette is, you should never give a judgment whilst he is angry. Whilst you are angry for whatever reason, you shouldn't give any decision at that moment. Why? Because it clouds your mind. You may be thinking this is justice, but because you're in anger, so certain thoughts may be coming to your mind, so it'll cloud your justice. They also say, لا يقضي وهو جوعان. Jawa'an means whilst you're hungry. Qazi Sahib shouldn't give any ruling whilst he's hungry. That'll also mess up the judgment. Many other rules and etiquettes. So فَاسْتَعِذْ بِاللَّهِ. Seek protection in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Seek protection in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from shaitan. As it comes in the hadith, that Rasulullah once he saw two people quarreling, and he said, and one person was flaring. And one hadith in Kitab al-Adab of Abu Dawood, it comes, the Sahabi narrates the hadith, says that this person looked as if his nose was flaring up. He was becoming red, very angry. It's human, it happens sometimes. So Rasulullah said that, indeed I know certain kalimat, some words that this person, if he says, then his ghadab and his anger will leave him. What are those words? أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. Shaitan is made, these are creatures made of fire. So the connection between fire and anger, this is very clear, it's very appropriate how the one affects the other. That's why it's also from the sunnah that when a person is in a state which he is angered, then he should sit down. If he's standing, he should sit. If he's sitting, he should lay down and should drink water. As long as you're not fasting. If right now someone makes you angry, don't drink water. You just have to lay down. فَاسْتَعِذْ بِاللَّهِ إِنَّهُ سَمِيعٌ عَلِيمٌ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is most hearing. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is most knowledgeable. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will protect a person from that. إِنَّ الَّذِينَ اتَّقَوْا إِذَا مَسَّهُمْ طَائِفٌ مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ تَذَكَّرُوا. Those that adopt taqwa in their life, those that want the lifestyle of taqwa and consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when such impulses or such insinuations from shaitan, when they come upon them, tadhakkaru, immediately they remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they don't act immediately upon their emotions. Now this obviously, there are certain qualifications for this, and there's some restrictions to this as well. For example, if someone is being abused violently, he's being hit, and that obviously a person looks at that situation, now you're not going to go there, okay, let me think about what to do at that moment. You have to stop the injustice. Where it's apparent, and you're seeing that someone is being abused and they're being hurt, then that's not the time where you actually sit down and think, because then the person, you won't be able to save him at the moment. So إذا مسهم طائف من الشيطان. طائف is these type of thoughts that come to a person. Tawaf means when something encircles. When you do tawaf, it's coming from the same word. So these thoughts that come, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is God-fearing people, and it's not only specific to the Rasul of Allah and the Anbiya alayhim salatu wasalam. Those that are conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they act appropriately by seeking refuge in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then these thoughts just remain on the outside. Then they won't enter a person. Because they tadhakkaru, they remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When they remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this moment, and they perform the dhikr of Allah ta'ala, they seek refuge in the protection from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also protects them from acting wrongly, from acting upon the hidayat and the guidance of shaitan. Now they will act upon the guidance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why? Because they remembered Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will show them truth for truth, haqq for haqq, and batil and falsehood for falsehood. So فَإِذَا هُمْ مُبْصِرُونَ. Then they are able to see things truly as they are. That this was a waswasa from shaitan. He took a moment and did the dhikr of Allah, sought protection of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and said that this waswasa and this whisper and this insinuation of shaitan, this was going to take me towards this direction. And he made it look as if it is the correct thing. وَزَيَّنَ لَهُمُ الشَّيْطَانُ أَعْمَالُهُمْ. Shaitan doesn't just tell you that, hey, go do this because it's a sin. Shaitan beautifies it. He packages it. He packages it in a way that a person, depending on who that person is. If the person of knowledge, then he'll give this wrapping of ilm and knowledgeable things and try to make it Islamic. And if the person is otherwise, then he'll know how to make that person slip as well. So فَإِذَا هُمْ مُبْصِرُونَ, then they are able to see haqq for haqq. This is a quality of taqwa that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as it comes in the Quran, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants a person a nur. When a person adopts the light of taqwa, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives a furqan, a nur, that a person sees right for right, good for good, bad for bad, evil for evil. If a person enters into a room and the light is off, it's dark. So now a person, he may think something is a stick, but it turns out to be a serpent. He may think something is beneficial, but it turns out to be harmful for him. Why? Because the lights are off. In the same manner, when the nur in the qalb, in the heart of a person, that is not there, and there's no clarity through taqwa and tahara of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then a person doesn't see good for good and evil for evil as well. وَإِخْوَانُهُمْ, on the flip side, those that have made shaitan, hizbu shaitan, those that have made shaitan their brethren, وَإِخْوَانُهُمْ, the brothers of shaitan, yani those that follow shaitani ways. That when such moments come up, when they ought to remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and seek protection of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they continue in acting in an ignorant and manner of jahala. So those become eventually the ikhwan, the brothers of shaitan. يَمُدُّونَهُمْ فِي الْغَيِّ, they continue to make them astray. ثُمَّ لَا يُقْصِرُونَ, and they become such that then after that they don't desist. So it doesn't happen immediately, but it's a continuous act that once one opportunity comes, you don't remember Allah Ta'ala, you don't seek protection of Allah, second time, third time, fourth. When this becomes a person's habit, then you become labeled, these are the brothers of shaitan. It comes in the Quran al-Kareem that there are shayateen al-insi wal-jinn. The Quran al-Kareem says that don't just think shaitan are these jinn creatures. There are also shayateen al-ins, devils of human beings. In fact, some of them are more dangerous. Some of them are more dangerous, that they will come in various forms, in various ways, but their only objective is to assist in devilish ways. We make dua that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protects one and all from all these shurur and fitna.